All right, guys, so today we're going to start talking about ordering rational numbers. We just learned about actual rational numbers. They can be our positives, negatives, decimals, and fractions. So if we have something like that, we need to talk about putting them in order. That's talking about least to greatest, greatest to least. So before we do that, we're going to fold our notes. So it has two sides just like this. I'm going to fold it in half, just like so, to where it kind of looks like a book. My Ordering Rational Numbers DFP is on the front. It opens up, and there's our two questions on the inside, okay? So make sure you have that. If you need to pause, you can go ahead. But next I'm going to talk about is this DFP right here. Notice, DFP, it's in alphabetical order. So we have D first, F next, P second. So let's actually talk about what those stand for. The D stands for decimal. Okay, my F stands for fraction. And my P stands for percent. So what DFP does for us is if I have a decimal and I want to turn it into a fraction, I can use DFP. If I have a decimal and I want to turn it into a percent, I can use DFP. Vice versa, if I want to change a percent to a fraction or to a decimal, or a fraction to a decimal, or a fraction to a percent, I can do any of that using DFP. Any of these I can change to another one. So let's actually talk about how we do that. So first, let's talk about one that we already know. We already know how to go from a fraction to a decimal. The reason we're using the arrow that goes this way is because we're going from a fraction to a decimal. So we do that by using our cowboy and horse. We already talked about this one. Cowboy goes on top, horse on bottom. And then when I set him up, again, my cowboy goes inside, horse goes outside, and I eat 2 donuts. So we already know that one. We know how to go from a fraction to a decimal. That's nothing new. Next thing I need to do is we can talk about from a percent to a fraction. We do that. First of all, we're moving from a percent to a fraction, so I need a fraction bar, okay? When I'm talking about percent, I have my top and my bottom. My bottom of a fraction is my whole number. And when we talk about percent, to have a whole percent is 100. If I have 100%, that's the whole percent. So my bottom whole is 100. And then whatever I have as my percent, it goes on top. And then once I do that, I also need to simplify. So whatever I have, I put over 100 and then I simplify. And then we'll do some examples in just a second. And then let's go from a decimal to a percent. If I have a decimal, I take that decimal and I'm moving from a decimal to percent, so I'm moving this direction now, but I have to go 2 places. So I'm going to think about those as hops. So I can move 1, 2. Okay? So let's use that example. So if I have 0.05, we take our decimal and we move it 1, 2 to the right. So here I move it 1, 2. So 0.5 would be the same as 5%, because that decimal would essentially go here and it would be 5 there. So that's the same thing as 5%. So all you do is move your 2 hops, okay? Easy peasy. And then if I was going to do the top, which is kind of the opposite, if I have a percent and I want to move to a decimal, I still start with that decimal, but instead of moving right, I'm going to the left. So I do 2 hops to the left, okay? So if I have 5%, my decimal goes at the back, so I would have to have it here, and I'm making 2 hops to the left, so I would have to do 1, 2. My decimal would be here, and then I fill this space in with the 0. So that way it would be the 0.05 that we started with. Okay, and then actually let's look at this a little bit more. So when we said we want to go from a percent to a fraction, we put the percent over 100. So our percent was 5. So if I wanted to do that from a percent to a fraction, my 5 would go over 100. And then I would need to simplify. 5 goes into both of those. 5 divided by 5 is 1. That's my new top number. And then 100 divided by 5 is 20. So my fraction would be 1 over 20. And then if we wanted to, we could cowboy and horse that to get the decimal, but we already have our decimal. So we're good there.